Hey guys, good evening. Thanks for having me. I am, this place is super cold, so it's fun. I'm thinking that we have a poker night pretty soon. Walk in, yeah, it's poker night. So yeah, my name's Kurt Kasdorf. I am a real estate investor full time. I also own a property management company. I currently own 190 units, and Fort Washington, Wisconsin. Got 3 sons, 23, 22, 18, and I try to send them all away, and they all come back. So I'm paying for three college bills. So cash flow needs to be spot on. Oldest is UWM. He's TJ. He's a football player. Then went to Spain for a while, and now he's some time off, trying to figure out life, and now he's back to UWM. Middle son goes to SDSU, San Diego State. We graduated a van this summer, so he's doing van life. Very excited about that. And then youngest son went to University of Minnesota. Didn't really do that well. Didn't like it. It was really ugly, all the purple filters and stuff like that. So he left. He's going to do a little soul searching as well, and it's semester. So that's a little bit about me. Just purchased some land of a house. So I'm going to do that. It's right on the border of Fort Washington and Grafton. So I wanted to build for like 15 years, and kind of, and I'm super excited about that. Everyone says it's a terrible time to build with expenses and material and everything. I was like, well, how would it like 80? Go ahead and try to have some fun here. As far as goals, I'm hoping to get to 250 units this year, and then after that, I'd like to go to 500, and then evaluate from there and get to 2,000. I'm tapped out on my own cash, so the only way to do that would be to start a new company, doing some certifications, and just talking to Brock. It's his day job as well, so we're gonna have to connect a little bit and learn how to do it. I've never done a syndication, but I'm a real estate nerd, and that's all I think about pretty much. So I'm hoping I can do that. So I'm hoping I can get there. I don't do resolutions, I do goals, and so I want to get to it. Hoping I can get there. Already this year, I'm trading up to 16 to 32. And then last night, I got an accepted offer on an office building in Grafton that never hit the market because he's going to get a call. I really like office buildings, Kurt, but this one's going for sale, and I'm actually doing a reverse 1031, which I've never done before as well. I know it exists. I know that's theoretically possible. So I'm learning on the go here how to pull this off. So anyway, I thought I would do 3 things tonight. So first of all, I'm just going to play a little bit more of the story. Topic is how I was able to scale up from basically small farm to getting where I'm at today. And then secondly, just kind of tell you a little bit about kind of some of the things that work for me, as well. And then thirdly, just hopefully have some questions. This is a really small group, and I'd like if it's just real informal, chat about. And then if you have questions during it, just shout them out. I hope this is a real back informal night. So my story. So basically, I was like a liberal arts nerd, studied philosophy, major, and got hired out of college as a middle school teacher.
What's the meaning of life?
Don't get me started. So got hired for $22,000 a year out of college. It's really great. And then got promoted to $23,000, and then $24,000 the next 2 years. So I was like, okay, I can see where this is going. In the year 2000, I went over, got hired for a corporate job and corporate sales. Actually, it's in military aerospace. I did that for 12 years. I got to cover the East Asia territory. So they sent me to like Japan, Singapore, and South Korea. And I was pretty good at sales and customer service, and I just like to be able to travel for free too. So that was a cool thing. And then the company as well had this educational program for any school that you want to do. So I was able to start my MBA, which I was like, okay, that actually might be practical, not what I studied in undergrad. So that was fun. So after the crash, 2007, 8, 9, that eventually hit all the government budgets. So all these military budget departments all over the world started cutting back spending. Our company started cutting back. Man, it's awful. It's like super toxic. The owners smartly flipped the company to Sikorsky, so every quarter we make the number, it was cutting heads. It was just terrible. I got denied 3 straight promotions, 3 straight promotions, and it's like, okay, this is not go anywhere. So I was going to try to find a place to work, but I really didn't want to have a boss anymore. So I was like, all right, what can I do to not have a boss? And so that was around 2009, and that put me into like this whole journey, which kind of led me here. And one of the things, actually, I'm kind of glad that it was so dysfunctional and so terrible, that the job, because I think the desperation of it, just like, I still need to get out of here and work something else. I think that pushed me to take on the risk that I would have done. So I started reading a ton. I started popping in my earbuds and listening to the Bigger Pockets like every day in the afternoon. When you guys all listen to this, and when I'm doing my like mindless quoting of aerospace parts, and then I lived in Brewersville neighborhood in Milwaukee. And it was like literally like every 5 of them, like 1 out of every 5 neighbors, I swear, owned a rental front. And there's a lot of fear I have because I cannot fix anything. I'm super not handy. I don't even know how a toilet works, and I just like, how am I going to actually fix things? And then I'm like, well, my neighbor can do it. My company do it. I think that was also being like in a culture of other people when rentals was nice. So started doing a lot of reading. Brought a couple books with me, but I have a lot of. I'll talk about some of those. Robert Allen, Multiple Streams of Income, the Rich Dad series, Brandon Turner, all the Bigger Pockets books, all that stuff. Really was good just to listen to those. So anyway, I tried starting a travel company, buddy of mine, and we were doing 10-day custom trips to Japan. We had a website, we had a name, it's great. 0 customers, so never did anything. But I think just the exercise of that, just starting something, was actually really helpful. Just be like, okay, I can try something, and it didn't work, so what? We were both working full time, so how we're going to take time off, 10 days off at the same time, and go to Japan, so I'm sure. So 2009, 10, 11 were just terrible. I left in 2012, so my last 2-3 years was awful, really toxic in my company. So I was just desperate. So I ended up finding a foreclosed condo development in Miami for sale, about 4 blocks from my house. And the developer started it, tail end of the crash, terrible idea, just drove away, gave the bank failed. You can imagine that back in the day. So I actually bought it from the FDIC. And these are stuff that people don't believe talking about these stories, how it was in that day. But I think that the point is, no matter what market you're in, you just have to be ready. So I'm jogging and I see all these open doors in these condos, and something just told me to go walk in and see what's going on. That's how it started. This guy was painting the doors, and he worked for the bank, and I buy this, and I was like, oh, parts in the shelf in the drawer. It's a stack of an agent who's now been my agent for 10 years. And I found this card in the drawer. So it's kind of funny how life works. So I ended up going to my dad, and I'm like, hey, I want to buy some. Well, I went to US Bank, and they just like laughed me out of the bank and like threw me out. And then I went to my dad, and he's like, well, do you have any money? I'm like, well, I have $70,000 in credit card debt, and I have no savings. And he's like, yeah, call me when you have some money. Click, So I was like, okay, tough lesson from dad, right? So I decided to live on half of my salary and paid off all my debt in about 6 months, got a bonus, and I was able to pay off debt with that. And like fast forward 9 months, I had like $10,000 saved up. And so then he's like, okay, now you're being an adult. Okay. So we went and looked at it and he ended up being my backer. And so we bought 4, there were 2 occupied, I bought 4 of them. So that was my first time being an owner, 2011. And I had my day job. And that was also when the iPhones were really starting to, the iPhone 3, and the iPhone 3. And I remember on my lunch break, just pulling out the iPhone and like emailing and texting contractors and getting rent set up and being like, holy crap, this is like a computer. Like I can carry it around and do my business from a little phone. It was again, this is a new thing that back in the day. And I was like, this is really cool. So 5 blocks, that was 4 blocks east of my house. So 4 blocks, 5 blocks. North of my house, I found a 12 family. It was 9 months later. I was so conservative because of the crash that just happened that I didn't touch any of the cash flow. Because like, well, I had a daytime job and I was already used to living on half of that. So I was able to save 100% of the cash flow, and then half of the cash flow, half of my own income I was able to save because I paid off my debt by now. So I had like $20,000 in the bank, or at least. And then this 12 family came up, and I'm like, well, that sounds fun. Buy that. So I bought a 12 family. And then some neighbors approached me and they're like, hey, like, do you like managing this property stuff? And I'm like, yeah, this is fun. And they're like, well, we really can't stand tenants and they don't pay their rent and they're really rude and they don't respect me and they break stuff. And can you just take care of my house for me? I'm like, sure. And so I started getting clients, and I like all of a sudden I had like 10 clients, like all neighbors and people from my company. They were like firing people left and right in my company. So like this guy had a house in Cedarburg and he got downsized and got a job in Florida, and he's like, I can't sell my house, Kurt, it's underwater. Can you manage my house? Sure. So all of a sudden I had a management company. I'm like, well, that's cool. So I founded officially like my management company, Kasdorf Property Management. That was in 2012. And so I had 10 clients. I charged $100 a month. So $1,000 a month I had, and I had no expenses because my living room was my dining room was my office. So that was kind of how that started. So then I kind of made a big decision here is when do I make the launch, like leaving the day job. That was like the really critical moment, you know. And if you listen to like a lot of the real estate investing, they always say, okay, try to get your passive income to equal your day job, right? You guys have heard this before. That's when you know you can leave, right? So you can retire. You know, it's not quite true. You don't retire, but that's kind of like the line. And so I was like, that was like 2/3 of the way there. And with this job was just so toxic and stuff. So I ended up finding a 36 unit foreclosure. I'll say that one more time, because this doesn't exist, right? 36 unit foreclosure, like that's how crazy it was back in the day. This is 2012. There's a 40 unit foreclosure in Good Hope, actually, not too far from here, well, a little bit west of there as well, that I looked at. But yeah, some guy from Chicago, he owned 12 buildings, all Avenues West area, west of Marquette. He foreclosed on 11 of the 12, and there's a lot of shady stuff going on. So I went around and I did like 30% or I don't know, like 80, like 70% of what they were asking for. And they're like, it was a Wells Fargo owned it, and they're like, sold. I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So I just stole this 36 unit. It was really, really a rough building, but I didn't know any better. So I'm like super like new with this and like all excited. And so so then I had 4 plus 12 plus about a 36. And I had like 10 clients. So the math, that's how many I had at this point. I knew that I was really in trouble. I couldn't manage that many while I was working full time. So I went out and found a property manager. MLG was my property manager, and I kept the smaller ones and they did that one. And then basically like 2 months later, I just melted down on my job one day, and it's kind of embarrassing. I just like quit. I wish I could go back and be a little more professional in the way I did it. But you know, sometimes you got to know like yourself, and you got to know like when you've gotten to the end of your rope. And I just didn't do a very good job of that. So I just like melted down and quit. But that's it is what it is, right? So I left. I was about 2/3 of my income. So I definitely had like a definite pay cut to take. And then my very first month, out of my 4 condos, one guy just bailed out on me. So I had no income the first month. Like, so my margin was like 1 over the 4. And so that was it. That was pretty fun. 0 income. I'm like, okay, great. I didn't make anything this month. All my coworkers were, what about healthcare? You're gonna quit your job? Like, what about your healthcare? That was a big thing that people always say when you're gonna quit your job, right? And like, oh wow, I can't get healthcare. Well, I did go 5 years without healthcare, so it was. But like, I just gotta like take risks sometimes, right? So, so anyway, so I was able to grow, and that was basically 2012. I mean, I got some money from my dad. I had a little inheritance on top of that I maxed out 100% of my house. Then I got a home equity loan on top of that and maxed that 100% out. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that because I was like, yeah, I'm really watching the people in the crash, and then I kind of did a little bit of the same thing. But I don't know. I figured take risks, right? And I just did not want to be corporate anymore. So basically that was 2012. And I think the next 2 years were just me really getting a hold of how I was going to do this. How was I going to manage it? So I started kind of following the BRRRR, method buy, rehab, renovate, buy, rehab, rents, and finance. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so I went through all these 12 units, fixed them all up, and then once I was done with one, I would move the neighbor into that one, into theirs. And that building got really nice. It's over in Harambe neighborhood, just north of North Avenue. And then I just trying to figure out how to do this like on my own. It was wild. It was really, really wild. And no health insurance. I also was trying to finish my MBA, and it was a single dad, and so it was a lot. It was crazy. But just kind of get through it, and it was definitely exciting. That was very unpredictable. So I decided to move into the 36 unit had a basement garden suite office. And I moved in there for my office because I was the owner, so I had a free office. Started to build up like a little office space for myself. Found a retired, semi-retired Harley Davidson engineer in Hill. He was like wanted to work 3/4 time, and that's it. So he was kind of like my handyman / like program manager guy. He handled renovations. He fixed up, but he also would like kind of help me fix other stuff, manage like projects and stuff like that. So he was good. And so about 2015, 2016, well, then my brothers thought they'd get me action with me. So my brothers and I, we bought a 16 unit over 21st and Elite. Another foreclosure. This is a Waterstone Bank foreclosure. So almost all my beginning properties were foreclosures. Wonder if that'll ever happen. Sure. Anyone ever bought a foreclosure? Okay, super fast. Okay. Where just really quick? How long ago?
2018.
Okay. 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 So they exist.
They do exist.
Okay.
I don't know if they exist anymore. But in 2019 they did.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's the thought of a multi-family being foreclosed today is just unfathomable. So 20.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So you said earlier that like you weren't that handy, like you don't even know how like a toilet works.
I don't.
Like how? No, it's like rocket science, right? So how did you go about like fixing up like that 12 units when you weren't very handy yourself? And I imagine that was part of the management team that you had. How did you find these guys to supplement the deficiencies and your knowledge of like repair and stuff like that? How were you able to bring those people on? I mean, I think you're kind of touching it on that with like Bill, the Harley Davidson guy, but like how did you build up that repertoire of vendors and relationships where you could delegate that to somebody else?
Yeah.
You know, since you weren't doing it?
Good, yeah, no, great question. So I think that being so unhandy, and my dad was like, I never saw him with any pressure, like just being so unhandy was actually a huge thing. Because I really feel like I identify more as an entrepreneur that's doing real estate right now, not just even like a real estate guy. And I look at every building like a profit center. That building is a profit center. It's like a business. How's it doing? Blah 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 blah. Should I keep it? Should I move on from it? And not knowing how to fix anything made me realize, well, I'm not good at fixing stuff. I'm good at what am I good at? I'm good at finding stuff. I'm good at running stuff. I'm good at doing numbers analysis. I don't like accounting, so I hired someone to do books and stuff like that. It's just super repetitive for me. But I like looking for stuff. I love the chase. I love negotiating. I like buying and selling. That stuff gets me really excited. So reading up Bigger Pockets and Robert Kiyosaki, they're like, build a team. Real estate's a team sport. It's a team sport. They just hammer that, and that's totally true. You just have to build a team. So I think I was more motivated to build a team because I didn't have that skill set, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't have that skill set. So 2016-ish now, I've been doing this for about 4 years full time. I really kind of got stuck. Like, I'm like, you know, I couldn't go anymore. I had no cash. You guys ever feel that way? You're just like totally stuck. Don't have any more cash to buy anything else, and you're just like, hey, now what do I do, right? And it was really frustrating, honestly. And I was developing these notes here, and I was like, wow, 3 years I didn't do anything. This is 2016 and 2016 through 2019. And I just felt like I was failing. Actually, I would go to some of these, not this thing, but like other real estate events, and there'd be some guy up there with like 400 units, and I would feel like some shame, and you know, 60, and I'm not doing anything. And I think that's a real temptation to share. It's like comparing ourselves to other investors. Like, we are all on our own journey, and some people here don't much you guys own at all. Some none, just learning. Some a lot maybe, but like everyone's on their own journey, and it's really hard though. I found not to like myself and just feel bad. Like I'm not a good investor, and I'm failing. So that was hard, I'd say. But what I found out later was what I was doing is I hired my first full-time employee, and she had a background in more like she was like administrative, like wizard, like everything I'm bad at, she's good at. So we ended up going to a VoIP system, and getting a new IT guy. We got the laptops. I got we switched over to Appfolio because she used William originally, which you know, I thought it was okay and good, but then when I went to Appfolio, I was like, wow. You guys use Appfolio in here? It's pretty good.
I like it.
And so my accounting intern and my full-time administrative person now, they like drag me to like improve our software and our infrastructure systems. They just weren't. It's kind of like, I mean, before 2015, I was operating off spreadsheets, so it wasn't that savvy with technology. So just going like those 3 years, again, it felt a little bit like a rerun of like 09, 10, 11 for me, because I just feel like I was just stuck. You know, I was to be honest, it was really hard. But so I ended up basically redecorated my office, new IT company, new phone system. I got a logo for my company. That was fun. I got business cards, painted new office furniture. It was kind of like a restructuring of my team. And in hindsight, now I can look back and like that was the foundation. Like, I would not be able to do what I'm doing now had I not spent that time building that base, because it's just that's managed. I didn't mention this. So my company manages about 350 units. We manage a lot of other clients as well, not just my stuff. Usually it's ends up being about half and half. So to be able to scale, I'll just say you got to have infrastructure. You got to have a plan, how to scale, and a way to do it. So then 2019 hit, And I don't know if you guys have experienced this when things grow, they just pop. Like all of a sudden I had money. I'm like, wow, I have money again. That's cool. And I bought, I went to look at 2 8 families. I'll just back up and tell the story real quick. I don't know if it was the Rich Dad Poor Dad or Robert Allen, but one of these guys said, go around and do 7 showings or 8 showings in a day and write offers on every single property that you visit. Unless it's like falling over and like it's gonna fall over and the walls are bent, write offers and offer like 30-40% off listing. Crazy, it's gonna annoy a lot of people. He's like, don't worry if you annoy him, don't worry. So I'm like green enough to do that. I'm like, okay, sounds fun. And I would suggest trying that, but you have to warn your broker first because you're gonna get really annoyed and think you're crazy. And so I actually did that, and I looked at 7 properties in one day. One of them was so horrible. I just didn't. I wrote 6 offers. 4 of them they threw it away. One guy like counted like $10,000 less, and then one like done, accepted. And that's how I got my first 36 unit, just following this crazy guy's advice. And but I think what that did is it got me a lot of confidence in just writing offers. If you don't own any real estate, by the way, who here owns right now at least one investment property? Who owns at least one investment, period? Like any type of investment, stock, anything else that's an income generating, who is looking to own but doesn't own it. Okay. So like that was actually pretty good advice, just getting in the game. Like, I have a buddy, he's been talking about this for 3 years. Hey, I'm gonna own real estate, I don't own real estate. And I'm like, dude, make some offers, just go look at houses, write offers, do something. And he's just like, oh, I don't know. I can afford it. Saved up for the down payment. I think it's just like pulling the trigger. So I think it's really important just to do stuff, just write offers. So anyway, I went to look at 3 again, this is 2019. And I wasn't quite so crazy as to like write offers at that time, but I like one of them. So I wrote an offer and I got accepted. And I looked at a second one and I'm like, wow, this one's, I don't like this one. I just don't want this one. And so it was listed for $300,000. And that was, it's an 8 family. That was how it was back in the day. And they're like, well, what do you think it's worth? And I'm like, I did my analysis on it and it was 210. So I'm like, hey, am I gonna really throw an offer for 210 for a $300,000 list price?
And like, what got you to the 210 price point?
Christian, what year was this? You said
This is 2019. Not too long ago, yeah. Actually, that's another thing. There's interesting pockets in the block. That you think are going to be rough, but they're not. All this local one blocks, But yeah, you had a great question. How did I get there? Okay, so later on, I'll kind of go over that. But
Okay, if you respond.
oh no. But the answer is learn how to analyze the deal and learn how to analyze numbers. And I have this little spreadsheet. I use the same thing for actually 10 years. It's just put the numbers in it. It gives you your cap rate. And I was a little more gentle this time. I said to my broker, hey, I don't want to bid on this thing, it's too low. So he called the broker and said, sorry. And seller's broker said, well, what does he think it's worth? Okay, here it comes. Right, 210. And it's like click, like of course comes the phone, right? So then, okay, I was honest, right? So fast forward 3 months, the guy got another buyer. Buyer got to the end of the deal, financing fell through. Okay, still for sale. The guy calls me, he's like, hey, is your buyer still on the building? I'm like, not for more than 210. He's like, we'll do 210. Okay, so I ended up buying 2 8 families when I was only trying to buy 1 because the price was just so ridiculously low. So I was able to grow 16 units. So then we get to 2020, and this is just where I'm just going to kind of go over a lot of this, but at that point I owned like around 70, like it was around like 75, 80 units, and I somehow went from that to 190 in like less than 2 years. So it was just crazy. So the short version is I ended up just starting to trade stuff up. And I just realized, like, okay, it's time to start trading stuff up. I think it was a mistake that I made.
By trade up, do you mean like 1031?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, selling stuff and then going for larger units. I think a mistake that I made originally was not that I was falling in love with my properties, but I thought like I had to hold this forever. It's a great investment. I had some really great buildings, like I put in a roof on a 12 family, $3,000 roof. So I was like, well, I gotta hold this thing like forever, right? So I had a building, I was holding something for like 8 years. And then the problem is all your cash is stuck there and you're kind of like limited in what you do. So it does go back to one thing I'll talk about in a minute, is what's your strategy gonna look like. But my particular strategy that I came up to was the mid-market apartment space, which is 8 to 50 units. That's my space. And I was able to figure that out. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna start selling some stuff. And I don't know what it was with COVID. People were just, there was a lot of stuff for sale. It's kind of right before the nothing's for sale part. So I started selling stuff. So I had a 12 and an 8 right down around the neighborhood. I packaged it for sale. So it was a 20 unit. And I bought, I think, like 50 units out of those 20. So I just kind of kept doing that. Those 4 condos I had owned since 2011. I just actually wrote this down. So the first one I bought 2 8-families. So the second one was only 1. I bought an office building, 10-unit office building where I moved finally out of the hood into Mequon. So I'm really excited about that. The third one, I traded up. I sold it and I bought a 16-unit in Cudahy, Glendale. Sorry. And the fourth one, I'm like, I want some cash. So I just sold it and stuck in my pocket. So I went from 4 to, what was that? 8, 10, 16. Yeah, so I went from 4 to 34. So I just started doing stuff like that. Now, the 36 unit that I owned, I bought it for $620. Yeah, $620,000. I put $300,000 in for my home equity loan, so I had $820 into it, and paying principal down over 8 years. Blah blah blah. I sold it for $1.35 million. So I had more than principal pay down and everything like that. I had like $600K like, in a 1031 exchange. If you have questions about 1031, it's not too bad. I'll have this afterwards. Conceptually, you put it into a fund, you go find new stuff and use that. So I think I turned that 36 into like 75 or something like that.
In those initial titles that you bought, either before you sold them, how did your financing work for that? Did you have that cash before you went first? Was your advance to month and year? Were you finding private money investors?
Yeah. So I had a pretty nice deal. I'll admit. My dad was my investor. Sure. So then he basically would gift me money every year to pay down the loan that I owned. So I was able to basically pay it off over those 10 years. So that was very nice. It was a nice start. So having 4 condos, just cash, was a nice deal. It's not, everyone doesn't, sometimes get that opportunity. It was really nice to have.
Are they like finished condos?
Yeah, the guy literally.
Brewers Hill is really nice now.
It is, yeah. No, it was literally the tail end of it. There's this condo craze, like 05, 06, 07, 08, everybody's building condos. And this guy, like the worst possible time, he built.
But they weren't like missing countertops.
Well, what's funny about that is the guy had his specs were, vinyl, carpet, regular linoleum.
Rental garage and stuff.
Yeah. But then when he foreclosed, the bank was like, wow, you should do granite, stainless, and hardwood floors. That'll make them sell faster. And I mean, these were for sale for like the nicer layouts were like $389. The smaller ones were $325. I bought them for $140 each. So sold them for like $275 10 years later. So it helps to get money. Yeah. So basically, I was able to just really scale up in a quick way. So this year I'm I just got a 16 unit, or the 16, this is crazy, the 16 unit that I just bought last year, in Glendale. I found a buyer that is local, he lives in Glendale. He's like, hey, I'll buy that. Okay. So I'm like selling it to him, and I'm buying a 32 unit in West Bend. I'm going from 16 to 32. And then I just got an accepted offer last night on a office building in Grafton. And someone called me and said, hey, this is gonna go for sale in a week. I know you're not really an office building guy, but you want to look at it? I'm like, sure. And then it ends up being right where I was 16, right where I did a lot of activity right there. And this is what they put the next office. It made sense. So I don't have anything yet to use for that. So I actually don't have anything to before it yet. So that's what I'm gonna do, a reverse 1031. And literally, like, I think learning as you go is a really big thing. Like, I just called Exeter, is the 1031 exchange company I use, and I just called them last week. I'm like, how do you reverse 1031? How do you buy a building with no money? She's walking through it, and then so basically you buy a building, and then you have like 6 months to sell something that you own to basically reverse back into the down payment.
It's good to know at that stage you're still clean.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know, you're
Oh,
just,
for sure.
As you grow, you're still.
Yeah.
Learning, right? Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my story part. So that's kind of like part one. Part two, I kind of put together some stuff. Is like, well, what kind of like what worked for me, and then maybe some of the stuff might kind of work for you guys. And wherever you're at in your journey. So I wrote down like everything. So first of all, I think most important thing would be education. Like read once, like listen to podcasts, like talk to other investors, read articles, read blogs. Like I actually I was kind of not making a list, but I read at least 100 real estate books, investing books, property management books. Read all the time. A lot of it was before I was in real estate, just trying to figure out what to do. It was very intimidating to go into real estate, not having, couldn't fix anything, and having no one in my family ever owned any real estate properties. So that probably was an advantage. Me not knowing, but it's huge. Get yourself educated. The more you read, the more you're going to feel comfortable doing these things, especially if they're new for you or as you're scaling up. So I'm going to give you my most influential books list. So number one on my list was the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. Ever read that one? Rich Dad Poor Dad? Okay, everybody. So my favorite are the first three. So first one, second, cash flow quadrant. Third, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. Absolute, I think, must read. I think those really changed the way I looked at like how he talks about like habits of the rich, middle class, and the poor, and what their habits are like. And I think that like, my dad was a successful guy. He's an entrepreneur, started a company, sold it. But ironically, I didn't really understand a lot about how to manage money. Well, it's like he was really not to criticize my dad, but I think he was like new money to say it like that, and he was really private and he was like overly like modest and humble about it. And he just didn't teach me anything about it. It's kind of unfortunate. So I had to kind of relearn financial stuff myself. So right, Rich Dad, Multiple Streams of Income by a guy named Robert G. Allen. It's an older book. He was a guy that said write offers on every property he listed. That was where I got that from. He kind of couched it in like the 3-second rule. 3-second rule, if you're like trying to like go to a bar and like it's a pretty girl and you 3 seconds. That thing, no one's heard of that. Okay. But you've heard of that?
Yeah, I heard of that.
He like use that as like the analogy for like rental, like buying properties. It's like you overthink it, you're gonna pass. So just like make an offer and stuff. And I think this guy is crazy. He'll just go and like this guy's funny. He does this challenge where you like pop him into the city and he owns like 10 properties in like the first like week. It's like throw me anywhere. I'll have like 10 houses under contract in like a week. And so it's just kind of crazy. And so I liked him a lot. Number 3, book by David Lindahl called Multifamily Millions. How anyone can reposition apartments for big profits. I like that one a lot. 4, definite must read Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Just absolute good way to get sort of visualizing yourself owning real estate. I think some of my friends, God bless them, I don't think they can own real estate. They don't think they can be an investor, so I don't think they do. So I think a lot of it is believing that and visualizing what that looks like, what that feels like. Anything like Brandon Turner, Bigger Pockets, like all of his stuff. I read like probably all of his stuff. And then another book by Mark Tier. It's called Becoming Rich: The Wealth Building Secrets of the World's Master Investor, Buffett, icon Soros. So it was a book on just like studying like the great investors and stuff like that. I wrote a list of stuff, I wrote a bunch of other stuff too. But that, I don't know, it's just some fun books. I ended up donating a lot of them, but the Rich Dad Poor Dad actually has like a whole series. Like there's like tax-free wealth, but there's a whole entire like 11 book series on the cheese. And this guy, I don't know who these guys are, but you know, ever read Cal?
Is that the one with Tom Wheelwright?
This one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah. I mean, literally, real estate. I don't pay any taxes. It's ridiculous. I have not paid taxes in like I don't know when. I don't know when. I don't think I ever will have to pay taxes. It's just it's sick, right? It's a fun way to invest. You know. I really like this guy. I don't know if you've heard of Cal Newport. You guys have heard of this guy? Deep Work. Really, really interesting guy. It just kind of talks about how you can get more done in life and concentrate and improve your level of just all the distractions going on and you know notifications and blips and beeps and stuff like that. I like this guy. The One Thing is really good. You read this book, basically saying you should figure out the one thing you're good at and do that exclusively the best you can. That was a really good book. Everyone knows 80-20 principle, right? So these are just a bunch. You can look at these later. All right, so that's number one. Read influential books. Okay, general investment strategy. So during the time I was preparing and the time I'm owning, I try to figure out, okay, well, why in real estate in the beginning? Like, what is good about real estate? So there are actually 4 ways to make money as a real estate investor. You guys know that? 4 ways. What are they? Hold on.
Appreciation,
Appreciation,
cash flow.
cash flow. What?
Depreciation.
Sort of. Actually, that's a 5th way. There you go. 5 ways. Okay, thanks right up. That's only 3. What else?
Value add.
Value add. Okay, I'm going to call that forced appreciation. Yep. And there's one more. Principal pay down. So 5 ways. Thank you for the 5th one, by the way. So cash flow, you make money by cash flow. That's like the obvious thing. But I think people think of it. People think of it like, oh, like some other thing that cash flows and like, or let's see how my stock does or something. But there's way more than cash flow. I would strongly suggest not buying if it doesn't cash flow. Don't be like Chicago New York investors, I think that's crazy. But there's only one way you make money with cash flow. So principal pay down, I don't think people think about this. Like I look at every year, every month, what I've paid off the bank, and I'm like, man, that's a hidden $10,000 I made last year. Like 10,000. I just made 10,000.
Especially with the way inflation's working.
Yeah.
If you have a pretty low interest rate, you're basically getting paid to hold a
Yeah.
mortgage.
Yeah. I've told people this before. You can literally have a building that's a loser. It just sits there and it breaks even for 10 years. You could sell it. Maybe it didn't even increase $1 and you could make a ton of money. So that's the second one. Principal pay down. Bjorn said appreciation. The better the area you buy, the more appreciation just comes. I call that natural appreciation. Forced appreciation. Someone said value add over here. And forced appreciation would be doing like the Burr strategy. You're getting in there. This is something I really focused a lot on, you know, putting in LED light bulbs, raising rents. I put a couple boilers in here and there, you know, and put a tech mark system in to make sure the boiler wasn't going like crazy. It was modulating to do with the outside temperature. And the smallest amount of change increases your appreciation. And then we said the tax advantages. So I have these arguments with my brothers all the time because we had this investment kind of like family thing, and they just didn't get that there's so many different advantages of it, but oh well. The beauty of it is you can hit on one of these, you hit 2, you can hit 4, and you can hit all 5 if you get a home run, but you don't even have to hit on all of them for it to just be great. So that's one reason I just love real estate. Okay, next thing. You mentioned this earlier. Learn how to analyze a deal. Okay, so there's basically like 2 things I use. Number 1, cap rate. Number 2, cash on cash. Really simple at my analysis. So cap rate, you guys all know what cap rate is, right? No, anyone not know what cap rate is? Okay. That's just like like apples to apples. That's, you can compare any investment. You can actually compare that to, to any piece of real estate, you know, apples to apples. Cash on cash. Okay. How's your money actually doing? You're not obviously buying a property for cash. You're leveraging it with, you know, mortgages. So at the end of the year, how much did you make in your pocket compared to how much you started with? That's how I measure my cash on cash. I'm mostly over 20% on all my investments, and I think that's like crazy. Wow, that's doing really well. And then that's not even calculating the depreciation or the tax savings or the principal pay down. If I put all that in there, I'm probably like way over 30 or 40% on everything. You add that all up. So other things I look at in a deal, I look at the area, the property type, or the condition. Those factor in, but those are the main things. Okay, next, really important, at least was for me, was determine the market space that I want to be in, or where do you guys want to be, what market space. When people say I want to be a real estate investor, there's way different ways to do that. Okay, so traditionally there's 7 areas of real estate investment, but I think there's an 8 that's come up recently, but okay, so 7. So number 1, you'd have single family flipping. Anybody part of Milwaukee RIA at all? Okay, yeah, they're all with the flipping, so that's I'd say number 1. 2, single family buy and holds. You know, guys that just do all houses. That's it. 3, duplexes, triplexes, and quads. 4, the mid-size apartment market would be 8 to 50. 5, large apartment complex, so 50 to 250. 6 would be land speculation or development, building, buying land. 7 would be REITs, real estate investment trusts. And then I'm going to add an 8th one because vacation rentals have been so popular lately. So technically that's single family buy and hold, but I think that's a whole nother category. So I remember reading this in an audiobook. Somebody came up with this list. I'm like, that is amazing because it helped. I was kind of all over the place for a while. I was owning some condos. I was thinking about doing like a rent to own, where I was going to buy houses and rehab them and then rent them to own. I was trying a lot of different things. I do own 2 Airbnbs, and it's just kind of fun. Where do you want your space to be? You know, and why? You know, like sometimes you start in one area, and you want to move from single families to like 4plexes. You know, it depends on a lot of things. Depends on what you like. Depends on what you're good at. Depends on, and everybody's different. And so when you're thinking about where you want to invest in, it's really crucial because you can get in that area and you can like totally drill down and like become the best in that particular area. Like I'm not a developer. It totally boggles my mind how to build something. It just boggles my mind. I don't know. Like flipping for me seems really hard. I don't think I'd be a good flipper. I don't think I'd be good at it. There's a lot that goes into those, a lot of pressure, a lot of time. So for me, I'll tell you how I got into mine. So at Rewind, living in Brewers Hill, I own no property. I'm just a schmo. I'm in a cube farm. And a lot of my neighbors are owning real estate, right? Almost all of them are owning duplexes. Brewers Hill is a lot of duplexes. And I was like, well, I want to get into this real estate stuff, but it seems like everybody's buying duplexes. Like everybody I know owns duplex, and they also seem very reachable. This is for me because it's a strategy. But I figured, if you go to quads, well, I started looking at some 4 families, Tulsa, like West, you know, Milwaukee over there, like Lisbon and Center Street, all that way. And I'm like, man, these are like cap rates are really low. Why 3, 4, 5, 6 cap? And I figured out that that maybe for me going upwards of 8 units was an area that like it changed the competition. So for me, going a little bit higher, even though it took me a lot longer to scale, I figured there'd be less competition because the people that were like the average, you know, husband wife team or maybe just first time investor, they weren't going to be able to get up to about 8 units. And a lot of people that I would meet, like, oh man, apartment building, that sounds so intimidating. That's something not. So people like that won't do that. So that's how I got into the space I'm in right now. And I've just been doing it now for so long. Like there was a property that came up in Eagle River, Wisconsin. Ever been to Eagle River, Wisconsin? So you drive by my building. It's 404 this time. Yeah, it's a red brick building as you're going through town. Now you guys will drive by. I drove by it. I we had a place in Three Lakes family cabin. I like to hike and camp in the forest right there. Just on 70. So this building is there, and I told my local girl Mary, I'm like, hey, this building in Eagle River. Actually, if anything ever comes up in Three Lakes, she's like, let me know. She's like, there's nothing in Three Lakes. There's no rentals. There's nothing here. There should be, but there's nothing. I'm like, well, what about like Anago and Rhinelander and Eagle River? She's like, I think I know somebody. So she calls me back like 2 weeks later, and she's like, there's this group of 3 couples. They've owned this property for 30 years, and they're going to list it for rent or for sale next week. They want $440 for it. I'm like, okay, tell me the rent. I'm like, literally turn it over the paper, piece of paper I'm on. Tell me the rent. Okay, da 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 da. I'm like, okay, I'll give them $425. She's like, okay. And I was like, I bought it sight unseen. And so now I did go look at the inspection, but the point is like I'm not some sort of wizard. It's just that when you do enough of the same type of properties, you just know them so well. Like you know the numbers, you know the expenses. You can just be like, yeah, $425 for all 2 bedrooms. They pay for the electricity. The rent's like $100, like $550 a month. I'm like, well, it should be $650 or $7. The rent don't come. So yeah, so I own a family in Eagle River, Wisconsin, and I love it. I go there, and it's like one of the most consistent like things that I own. So okay, 3 more things, and then I'll open up questions here. I was a teacher at one time, so I did bring a visual aid. So I call this the Monopoly analogy, and I literally just came up with this last night. So I was thinking about this. So one way I think I was able. Okay, who's played Monopoly? Everybody, right? Okay, so you're playing Monopoly and you're like landing on like all the wrong things and like the utilities and like jail, and you have like nothing. And the other guy has got like all these cards and he's like stacked up with cards, right? And you're like nothing. What I think scaling up is like accumulating a lot of cards. You don't always know what's the best deal, what's the worst deal. You might own some like okay ones, some super big winners, kind of some losers, kind of some dogs. But if you have a group of like cards like sitting in front of you, you have things to trade, right? The guy that's like totally losing Monopoly, that's like 3 cards and they're all terrible properties, he doesn't get anywhere in Monopoly, right? He sits there. So my analogy is just owning stuff. Sometimes it's just good. Just own stuff, and then you have stuff to trade. And I think I didn't even plan to do this, but just the last going from 75 to 190 somehow in like 18 months. That's basically what I did. I just all of my sort of trading. I'm like, hey, I have these, I can package this, and then because I'm in the mid-market space, my goal is every time I sell anything. So if I sell 8, I have to get 16. If I sell 20, I want to get 32 or more. If I sell 1, I want to get 10. I want to get 8. So like I'm always trying to multiply the number of units too. That's my strategic plan, my plan for my growth. I just wrote down a few other things really quick. I wrote down develop a management plan, management system. There's tons of free management software, like for 50 and less, tons of like free stuff. Down visualize yourself, like in your head, like what do you want to own this year in 2022? So I like wrote down I want to own 250. Okay, so I have it on my whiteboard, and I just imagine like what would I like to be owning 250. And I'm already going to be at like 16 and come like May 1st. So that's already like I'm on my way already. But it's really hard to get there when you don't think you can. And it's might sound kind of like if you think you can. And so it's sort of like that, but sort of not. It's more like, picture in your head what you want and start to make steps towards that. You just really go a long way. I wrote down a quote from somebody. I don't know who this was, but it said, "Whatever you lack, someone else has." Say it again. Whatever you lack, someone else has. So you don't have cash, there's an investor out there, right? You don't have anyone to loan you money. Someone knows someone that that has a really good banking relationship, right? You don't have an agent, there's an agent. Tell me this room. Anyone licensed? There we go, right? You don't have anywhere, you can't find properties, you talk to an agent, okay? You don't know how to manage property, talk to a property manager, okay? You don't know what you're doing, go to Bigger Pockets. Like whatever you don't have a guy that prepares appliances, call John for appliance or call an appliance company. But if whatever, don't think to yourself, this is what I don't have. Think that whatever I don't have, somebody has somewhere out there that can help me with it. And then basically, just real estate is a team sport. Build your team. So, okay, so that was my part two. That was kind of things that have really worked for me. And I guess part three would be questions. What can I dialogue on? Yes, lady in the back.
Hello.
Hi.
Biggest regret?
It's probably. I try not to have too many regrets. I try to think of like Tony Robbins. If you're not mistaken, it's a consequence. What does he say? It's
Was it happy accident? Bob Ross?
he's like there's no mistakes, they're just outcomes.
Okay.
Right. But I honestly, it's probably the way that I quit my day job after 12 years. I do feel like I couldn't handle that. I play poker with my boss now, so
You got
I
past
was like so mad at him. I was like, okay, so I found out when I quit that those 3 promotions I got denied. My boss was doing end around because he really liked, because I was like number 1, 2, or 3 in sales. And so instead of me being able to grow, he was like he was getting the CEOs and not let those guys hire me and promote me. So I was really honest. And I said a whole bunch of stuff about it. Sort of justified, but as far as regrets go, let me think about it. I don't know if I have any. I don't know. I think it's a lot of trial and error. I don't really think I have. Next one.
I was just gonna ask how you quit.
Oh, sorry.
fiery crash, clearly.
Yeah, thanks.
Was it like Office Space?
It was bad. Okay, so there's a dress code in this company. You either dress up, business casual or casual. Every day at 3 p.m. it's then you need now. Important people in the office, they would like you to dress up. Average was like business casual or casual. Was that Jeff? Yes. Yeah. So Kurt here in the morning, like he's like running around getting my stuff ready, blah blah blah, and I have sandals on. It's like just like my sandals in the morning, and I had my shoes with me, but I left them at home, so I didn't have any shoes on. Well, somebody rats me out that I'm wearing sandals at work. I'm not making this up. This is how dysfunctional this place is. Like they're all these gossipy, Nancy's that I work with, and they're like, "It's wearing sandals." So literally, HR called me into the HR office, and they're like, and then the guy like pulled out. No, I didn't like this guy very much. He didn't like me. He pulls out like his like official HR like thing, and he's like got the manual. He's like, "No, we have a dress code here at this company." Yeah, I know. He's like, casual, you cannot wear any open toe sandals and any sandals at all. I'm like, yeah, forgot my effing shoes, okay? And he like wouldn't give up the act, And I'm like, look at the guy. I'm like, dude, I am number 1, 2, or 3 sales guy the last 4 years straight. Forgot my sandals, and I didn't say it. And he like wouldn't give it up, and like he was just like reading me off, like he was like, gonna like literally write me up. I'm like, fine, I quit. And I just walk out and walk out. And then he's like, we got to like give your notice. I'm like, fine. And I just like gave him my boss, like I quit. I don't want to work anymore. And I was after 12 years, and I do feel like I said a lot of stuff. I wasn't just. I quit over being written up about wearing sandals. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
So, obviously, there's different challenges and different sizes of properties. Going to your point that you're assuming you give a lot of different layers.
Mhm.
What is your challenge that you found going to the single family or 80s or less going to the middle market is the first question.
Yeah.
Variance in there. The second question is where the side front, and I know exactly the shape you're talking about that.
Oh.
Who
was it?
It was guaranteed, wasn't it?
No,
M&I.
It wasn't.
wasn't it? No, it was like
I
It's
no, I
like-
used to work at.
maritime something. It was Marine one or.
Marine Bank, yeah,
Okay.
yep, okay.
Some of it,
They
yeah.
were, yeah,
Some with sailboats.
The other meeting goes to go first,
Oh.
so if maritime being the first. Aside from those properties, where are you finding your best deals? Are you going through a broker and like on market deals or just the connections? and
Yeah.
networking? And
Yeah.
How are you finding the deals?
Yeah. Okay, two-part question. So first one, how did I go from like singles to like mid-market? Good question. So each one of those 7 areas, I personally think are completely different approach, like management approach, investment approach. How much do you, how do you put aside for like maintenance? How do you manage tenants? I mean, my friends that have single families, they'll tell me that they never hear from their tenants. They cut the grass, they shovel the snow, they change the filter, they fix holes, they fix the windows. Like, I have got some people that own like 15 single family houses. They never hear from them, you know? So one of the things that advantages about singles is there's a lot less, like, if you get good tenants in the good areas, you don't even, they just do their thing. Going to multifamilies, there's way more touches here. So I think for me, I read on how do you manage multifamilies, because my theory was that I could gain more equity quicker with multifamilies. So I was very motivated to figure out how to do it. One thing I would suggest is I always have an on-site manager at anything that's 8 units and above. Give them $100. Do the hallways, pick up the mailers. I'm almost paying for someone to be on my team. Really, yeah, they clean the floors, but it's so I have $100 off 8 unit. That's like my standard. So I feel like I'm some of the ground person there. It's important too. Second question was, where do I find my deals? It's so crazy random. You know, I mean, I'm on every. So if you don't have a broker, I see some in the room here. You can get any and all lists set up in auto list if you want. So like, even if you can afford something, just get any possible thing you ever wanted to own on your MLS list. Just start looking at them. That's number one. Okay. And then like Zillow, like I look at this all the time. It's not addictive. But I'm always looking at Zillow. I'm like favoriting stuff. I'm looking at LoopNet. I'm saving stuff as favorites. My agent has anything that's 8 or above in Wisconsin, look for sale, full state, I get. So I just look at everything. And so that's, and then lately there's been like nothing for sale. I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not. There's like nothing, there's no inventory. So that's where I've been more like, I cold called a guy that I thought was for sale. Turns out he actually just bought the property. So I'm like, oh, well, what else do you own? He told me he had 32 minutes in West Bend. So I'm like, we'll get coffee. He's like, sure. And then he's like, well, I'm not going to sell these. I'm like, that's okay. Let's just have coffee. And so we had a coffee and talked about it, and what his plans were. And then I was like, okay, a great strategy is tell somebody that owns a property that you might want to buy. Like, hey, I've got a 1031 coming up in the next 6 months. If you're interested, I'll call you when I have it ready. That's a really, really good technique because people are like, they know that you have like funds that it's coming to, they know you're good for it, you know? And then, so then I called the guy back like 2 months later and he's like, yeah. And he actually wants to sell me his whole portfolio. It's 160 bits. So, yeah, yeah.
Do you mind sharing the rest of it?
No, I will not. Yeah.
My question is, what's for sale right now?
Oh, okay. Well, I have a gentleman in this room that's actually looking at them already. Should I disclose that? No, okay.
You can do it.
Well, I met a guy this guy back here at a week ago, and I have 2 8 families we're talking about. But let me talk back to us. I don't know. Think about it. Yeah. Everything's for sale, right? Like, literally everything's for sale. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess what goes along with the gold bond, like what's your strategy? So you drive past this, building, Grand Avenue. And, you find the owner, it's Mary, whoever, look her up, the phone numbers don't work. You call her at work, they blow you off. What's your strategy?
I just move on.
What the thing?
What's that? Are you talking about like someone that's like you're trying to like maybe like
Yeah, you're trying to
who's the owner?
solicit the person who,
Yeah, I just move on. I just
You
move on.
can't find the number.
Yeah. There's one like that right where I live, man. I want it's an 8 family. It's super beautiful. I own, obviously, just built the same time as another one I own around the corner. And for the life of me, I can't figure out. I call the guy, left messages. The next thing I might do is go stalk the tenants, get the number. I might try that. but I kind of get them.
Where's the
Nothing's below you.
Yeah, right.
Well, I've done that too,
Okay.
you know.
So I didn't tell this story, but part of my growth was I found a guy listed a 24 unit on Craigslist in 2019. It was one of the first ones I was able to find. Met with a guy, did not want to use a broker. It's very like, say it's kind of cheap, you know? And I was able to talk to a guy and he ended up selling me 70, a guy in the 70s, ended up selling me this entire portfolio of 72 units. So I just kind of like, if you can find like, I don't know, in Vegas, they call them the whale, right? Vegas terms. You find a guy that owns a ton of stuff. Yep. But no, these guys are all over the place. Like, go to the events like these, the apartment association, that, you know, lady in the back is part of and we've been going to now. They have all these guys that are like retiring and I think I got to coffee. They're like, hey, like, you want to start selling your stuff? They're gonna be like, yeah. And it's easier just having coffee with a guy and working on a deal, like on a piece of paper, than it is him with the whole deal and writing an offer out and stuff like that. So basically I had my Randy, I'm gonna call him, and he actually called me yesterday and he has one more duplex. I bought all of his portfolio. He has one more duplex in Shorewood. I'm gonna look at it next week. My son is now EWM, so I'm like, maybe I could buy this with my son. He could, you know, rent half, rent the other half, and then have his first investment for him. So yeah, find a Randy. Yeah.
So you talk about like building your team, and one of them being like an agent. So like, what do you look for, I guess, in an agent when you're an investor?
Yeah, great question. So I have the same question I tell every agent. Okay. So I have a main guy named Brian. He's been doing my stuff just for 10 years. He's just top-notch professional. So I'd say, first of all, if you want to be, distinguish yourself, just got to be top-notch. Just everything you do, top-notch professionalism. And once you start working with people like investors, they're like repeat clients, then you can really get a lot of repeat business. But the second thing I do is I have a test every broker I meet. And I'd say, they'll say, hey, you know, you want to buy this and this. I say, look, Mr. Agent, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, I said, I'm on every list there is. So I already have a main guy. I don't need any more lists. Find something off market, 8 to 50 units. That's what I do. And give me a call. I've probably given this speech 50, you know, I've gotten like four people have actually like reached out to me. And every person that does this, I bought stuff from. So I think it's like, I'm not saying they're lazy. I'm saying that like I'm not just gonna like hire you because I.
Oh yeah, and I wasn't saying that. I was
Yeah,
just
no,
saying
no,
for
no,
people
not
to-
you
yeah,
personally,
yeah.
but like I'm saying, I've given the same speech. Now I got a girl named Deb. She lives up in Appleton area. She found me a 16 unit in Black Creek, Wisconsin. You know where Black Creek, Wisconsin is? I don't either, but I own some there. It's western Green Bay a little bit, but she is like this, like she'll sit there and there's this other property and I can't tell you where it is, but it's up in Middle Range, and this couple own a campground, and so she went over there and like sat like in their campsite with them and like cooking like marshmallows and stuff, because I'm trying to buy a 16 unit. It's off market, no one knows about it. But I'm working it. I'm playing the long game here. She'll like literally go there and like to their campsite and like, because they're kind of weird, the sellers are a little strange. So I think it's finding, like connecting buyers and sellers together. So you go out and you just network here in this room and hey, I'm an agent, what do you need? Ask them what they need. Okay, let me get your card, let me try to find some stuff, right? They'll love that, man. They'll love you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Kurt, I hear you talk about acquiring some of these units in what I would call like a quaternary, market, right? Like these like smaller, towns around like Wisconsin. How do you evaluate those deals? Like, how do you feel comfortable investing in like seems like these towns maybe like 10,000 people or less,
Yeah.
sort of, areas. I typically invest in like my backyard or like places.
Yeah.
I think that's like in general like a good place to start, especially for new investors. But you seem to gather all these deals from these remote places, and you're like, okay, I'll do that. Like, then it meets my criteria. Like, how do you evaluate those? Because they seem like, when I do like analysis on those sort of markets, and I know like we talked about maybe that one in, was it Munising? Not in Munising. Escanaba,
Yeah.
right? So we talked about that deal.
Most probably.
Like, it's interesting, but like, how do you evaluate that? Because I've never been, like, I've heard about it, but you know, you have like these markets that, you know, are much smaller. How do you evaluate those deals and feel comfortable with, you know, what you're purchasing there?
Yeah, no, great question. So, so when I was a new investor, it was really important to me to feel comfortable with my investments. I was so nervous, I was so conservative. So literally I drew here's my house on a map, and I just drew like, if I can't drive to it in 15 minutes, I'm not gonna look at it. It was like a 15-minute radius. That's all I would do. And literally, my first one was, I could literally jog to the first 20. I mean, it's 4 blocks one way, 5 blocks one way. That was in all of Brewers Hill, River West was the only place I was working. So, and then I went to, you know, Avenues West, 26th Street, and that's as far as I was going. I lived in Second and Brown, you know. But I think as I got more comfortable, my criteria is, if I'm gonna be going there organically, I'll invest in it. So like, I bought, one of my huge trade-ups was in Oshkosh, about a 35 unit in Oshkosh in 2019. That's an interesting story.
Was that the LoopNet one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm losing it for a year. You know, like, wow, that doesn't happen anymore, right? No, I know how I was gonna afford it. Actually, I'll tell you, see, I put the offer in, not having any idea how I was gonna afford the down payment. I just thought, well, let's figure it out. So you gotta take some crazy risks sometimes. But so I had a dream of owning a log cabin someday. So I bought 40 acres of land in Upper Michigan, and there's a cabin in it. It's really cool. It's on Airbnb now to make some side money. But I just drive up, and so to get there, I have to drive through like Creek Bay and Oshkosh and all the area up there. So I'm like, well, anything in this corridor, like I would own. And you asked how do you find the deals? Well, there's like nothing down in Milwaukee anymore. There's nothing in Ozaki. There's nothing in Waukesha. So I'm like, well, maybe I have to try Fox Valley. So and then how do I evaluate them? Well, that's where if you're in a space, you can know it really, really well, right? And then my theory is, so Black Creek is like this town, if you drive through it, like there's a gas station, and then there's like subway, and then you just go through it, you miss it, right? But my theory is, okay, I have to find 16 people out of maybe the 5,000 that live here. Okay, that's not hard. Or Eagle River, I have to find 8 people to rent from. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It's just like any other type of investment. I just have to like be better. That to be slightly better than the worst one in town.
You try to like leverage your relationships with like brokers that you're buying them from to kind of set you up for success. Like,
Oh, yeah.
As far as like, okay, well, I live in Milwaukee and this isn't like, you know, the Michigan, Wisconsin border. I'm gonna need, you know, like a handyman
Yes.
and a plumber.
Yes.
The plumbers
Yes.
I know here don't go 4
Yes.
hours up there, right?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I like the whole team. Yep. Yes.
I'm a lender. I do 1 to 4 family. So a lot of times when looking at, you know, people that are buying a property, if, you know, there's tenants, you know, in a duplex or a 3-unit or a 4-unit, you know, that helps if they're going to stay and they can write a new lease. Are
Yeah.
you looking at if some of these, you know, larger properties already have tenants in there that have been long-term? Does that help you decide that you can keep them in there?
I think it depends. Like every property I buy, it seems like there's a little bit different. The owner is treated a little bit differently. My own philosophy is I try to get everybody on 1-year leases. It might not matter to them, but I think it matters when I go to sell. Having everybody on month to month, because I'm hearing it, you get a little nervous as a lender, maybe, or if it's half full.
Well, I mean, a lot of times people need the money to qualify unless they're kind of, you know, a small investor, have a few properties. But like from a risk perspective, I was just wondering if you're looking for apartment buildings that have tenants that have been there a long time, it's just easier to keep.
I don't really care. If
You don't care? Okay.
a year, 10 years, whatever. If there's a property that's like half full, I'm really suspicious and I'll want a discount or I won't buy it.
Right. But I mean, if it's completely empty and it's been there for a long
I've
time.
never done that.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that you wrote up an offer without having the funds in place to write that offer. Can you walk me through the verbiage? I'm not as familiar with the commercial. I know it's a little bit more lenient.
Yeah.
You've only done one commercial deal prior to this. So just a little bit what you wrote, how you kind of skated by. 'Cause you got the deal in place, then you found your financing, correct?
Yeah, so it was really crazy. I mean, I'm not suggesting it. But, so I was watching this property in LoopNet. This is beautiful. It's like a 5-story, it was a former hospital that buyers bought it, and they like converted some of it to like a assisted living facility, and then the other part into a multiplex. It reminds me of like a really high-end dorm.
I'll be honest with you, that's part of their planning when they build it. They build it in knowing that if the hospital were to fail,
Oh,
they will convert it to
Good
all
call.
nurses, so we understood that.
that's good. You're gonna do well. You're gonna do well. Nice. That's awesome. No, you know,
But that's-
it's-
that's the thought process. Well, there's a couple that we like, you go up and you go, the one at the Aurora Graft is brand new.
Yeah.
We both worked at Columbia St. Mary's in Osaki, right?
Okay.
So we
Okay.
did our cleats there, and we go in, and you notice it's the glass
Yeah.
elevator that goes up the 3rd floor, and no other hospital like that.
Okay.
One of my questions was, well, why did you do it this way?
Yeah.
So you got some carpet throughout a lot of your
Yeah.
units, which is like a
Unheard of in a
hospital, the worst thing you could do in the world. You would
Okay.
never, the things you put out. So I asked them, why would you do it this way? And they said, well, if for whatever reason the hospital would go under, it's pretty much prime ready to go because we're down. So somebody was thinking about that ahead of time.
So you guys are in line with Aurora Grafton. You
You
guys are like lined up. The lender right here.
He's gonna have to fight me.
You guys don't even have nurses anymore.
You
It's just-
you agent, yeah. Yeah, no, okay, so this is, again, I sometimes think one thing is just be creative. I would encourage you guys, like, the stuff I'm doing, some of the stuff I never even heard of. Like, I'm a big student of reading, but ultimately sometimes you just gotta like make stuff up, right? So this property is on LoopNet, it's 35 units, it was $2.8 million. I had no possible way of coming up with 100%. I had no idea where to get it from, but I was like watching it. I was, it's all kind of goofy, but I was like visualizing, like, it would feel like if I was the owner, how would it feel when you walk through it, how proud I would feel about the owner, like pride and ownership type thing. So then I was like, you know what, hell with it. I'm just sitting there. So I just made an offer with the intention that I would sell something, sort of like a reverse 1031, but not even really the official kind. So I got under contract, but then I went to my broker and I'm like, we gotta sell this, or this to fund that property. Well, then COVID hit, and that, like, I ended up having to keep increasing, to save the deal, I had to keep increasing my security deposits. The last one, I had 3 different delays I had to give the guy. The last one, I had to make my 20,000 security deposit hard. Like, I didn't meet the last deadline, it was out. So I pushed like all my chips in. But I ended up like 7 days before I had to close on that one. I closed on my one. So that was my 36 unit. Sold it during COVID. That was crazy.
The one thing different is that most commercial, you can go for 90 days. So that's the difference between,
31 or,
no, if you're buying a commercial,
so your
Yes,
grace period.
grace period is mostly 90 days where residential is 30. So that's why you have more time.
Your commercial realtor? We'll be talking.
Good connect.
I think we're gonna wrap it up. Does anybody have any burning questions they want to ask Kurt before we wrap up?
I'll be around. Thank you.
All right, great. Kurt, thank you very much.